Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. We are joined by SwimSwam Associate Editor Tori Hart from downtown sunny Oakland, California, and SwimSwam Editor-in-Chief Braden Keith from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What's the weather like in Philly right now, Braden? Is it sunny?
It's okay. It's like 50 and it's sunny.
Nice.
Whatever.
It's sunny in Oakland, actually, Tori?
Always, except for last week. It's always sunny in Oakland. Sunny side of the bay, as they call it.
It's always sunny in Philadelphia.
All right, let's get right into things. We had a big week of swimming with NCAA mid-season meets, ISL, you name it, we swam it. Let's start with the NCAA mid-season meets. One of the biggest things I saw, Alabama came out looking red hot. Is this a good sign for Margo Geer's first year as head coach at Alabama?
It's definitely a good sign. We knew they had talent, even though they lost a few transfers, they lost a few commits. We knew there was still talent there. And so it was a sign of whether she could sort of keep that talent going. And she certainly has done that. It shouldn't be too much of a transition. Ozzy Quevedo is still there as an assistant. Margo trained under the prior head coach, Coley Stickles. So it shouldn't have been too much of a shock to anybody's system with the coaching change. And that's, I think, the good news for her. We still have to see what she can do with her swimmers, with her recruits, if she can develop them, if she can make them good sort of fully under her training. But I think for now, this is at least assuaged the worst of our fears of what is she, 28-ish year old head coach who has never really been a full-time swim coach before, taking over a program like Alabama. There's some concerns about how that's going to go. But, I think the worst of those fears we can push aside, and now she can sort of work on the rest of those things that she needs to cement herself as a top D1 head coach.
As you said, feel like we can't read too much into it. First invite of her tenure there, but I think for those in the know about the situation over there, it kind of was a statement showing from Alabama really across all strokes, all disciplines, just really came out swinging and then impressed across the board with some standout swims in there as well.
I think one thing that, they had their sensational weekend, and then we just published an article this morning about a kid decommitting from UNC and recommitting to Alabama. It's like, it seems like this is already kind of sent shockwaves of like, okay, yeah, Alabama's legit. But let's move on to the next team that looked really good this weekend was Arizona State. They're coming off, of course, their redshirt season where they didn't compete at all in the NCAA last year. What were your thoughts on seeing ASU just coming out swinging in their first, really big meet in a year and a half?
I think it's great to see. My first thought was, I wonder if they're getting that sort of, the thing coming out of the pandemic where everybody was swimming super fast, having not had a meet, had maybe been doing some training, doing a lot of sitting at home. A lot of swimmers last year came out swimming super fast. And I wonder if this is just sort of Arizona State getting that effect. But Leon Marchand is the truth. That's just one more name to throw. We've talked on this podcast several times about the 400 IM and NCAAs with Carson Foster and Hugo Gonzalez and whoever else I'm not thinking of. And that's just one more name to throw on that pile that's going to make that a great race at NCAAs.
I did really suppose it was particularly on the men's side where they, were shining, and would be great to see a little bit more pushing of the envelope from the women's team. Emma Norden had some great swims, swept the 200, 500 mile, really came out swinging. But it was, the Grant Houses, the Julian Hales, the Jack Dolans on the ASU team who really stood out in this meet.
I think it's kind of interesting. It's almost like Emma Norden going into that canceled NCAAs, she was like about to have her meet. And then because of last year with them not swimming, it's almost like everybody forgot about her. But she could have been Paige Madden last year had Arizona State swum. So I think it's exciting to see that her momentum wasn't disrupted by the year away, because she looked like she was on a precipice in 2020. And then the COVID just kind of did what COVID does.
I think it's kind of funny you say, she could have been Paige Madden, because leading, last year, long course at the pro swims, like she looked like she was going to make the Olympic team. Like she looked like the sleeper that was going to do what Paige Madden ended up doing at trials, making the 400, getting on the 4x2 relay. Like I thought Emma Nordine was going to be that girl who did that. She looked sensational last year at a lot of the pro swims and long course, and having that focus. I thought she was going to do that, but it is really great to see her not have the trials I thought she was going to have, but then bounce back in yards and still look sensational.
What would be a fun game on this podcast? We should have Tori and I, the writers, pronounce people's names, and then we should have Coleman, the video guy, pronounce people's names.
I was just thinking about this as he said Nordine, and I thought, darn, I'm so uncultured.
We know how to spell all their names, but
yeah,
we never talk to say their names out loud.
Yeah, you would think I would know them better than I do, but we've already established that it would be a fun game. We should play that one day. Yeah, we do. Who knows? I feel like there's 5 legitimate ones for Sarah, but next team, UVA looked great as they always do, but I feel like the real story there was that they look a lot better than Stanford does right now in terms of who's going to take that NCAA women's title. UVA came out, broke ACC records, went really, really fast. Stanford went really fast. Their studs went pretty fast, but their second tier swimmers were not on this weekend. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. Virginia, I think there's still room for them to be nervous. We don't really know what's going on with Gretchen Walsh's health. We know she missed the meet with a health issue. I think there's still enough to be nervous about there if that's a bigger issue than just missing this meet, if she's missing training or so on and so forth. But Virginia clearly looked and has continued to look better all season. We're going to run some numbers later, kind of comparing the different invites, and Virginia probably won't come out favorably because of Gretchen Walsh, because they don't swim the 800 free relay until ACCs, which the coaches have explained to us is basically that means they get out of that night of the invite an hour and a half earlier. And it worked for them last year because they won. So you can't really knock the strategy on that. I don't think it's over. I think there's a few things that we still need to find out, but it's pretty clear at this point that Virginia is the prohibitive favorite. Some of the NC State fans really want them to be in that conversation, and they've had some good meets. I don't think they have enough numbers to compete with Virginia at this point.
Is there any concern from either of you that, Virginia's peaked too early? Are they going to have more room to drop come ACCs, come NCAAs?
Does it matter? I mean, if Kate goes at 203 in the 200 breast, does it matter if she drops time?
No, fair point.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like it seems like Todd and Blair and Tyler and the whole UVA coaching staff they've got it dialed in to where it's like, yeah, we swim fast all the time, and if we do that, and we swim fast at the end of the season, we don't need to go faster.
And I mean, if look at the summer, how many teams can say they send if you include the post grads, 5 Olympians? Does that include Emma, who wasn't really training with them?
Yes, it does.
So
it's Alex,
Kate,
Paige, Katie Duluth, and then Emma.
So 4 were actually training with them. All went to the Olympics and won medals at the Olympics. And we know how the U.S. kind of struggled, and not many programs can say they handled that double rest as well as UVA. I think people are still, this is sort of they're not USRPT, but they're very heavily sprint based. So they're going to go fast all year. But they seem to have perfected what they're doing, at least on the women's side, where they can go fast all year and still go faster when it counts. So I guess I'm not too worried about that, just because 2 big meets in a row, they've shown that it's not an issue.
Well, and especially for the shorter swimmers in the shorter distances, right? Like Alex went 403, 401, something like around 401. So it's like yes, that's an ACC record, but it's like, do we think Alex Walsh can go faster than 401? Like I do.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, and like 203, like again, that's really fast, but like it's Kate Douglas. Like I think she could probably find some tenths at least here or there. And like, so yeah, it just seems like UVA's on a roll and they kind of have that dialed in. So next up, we had a lot of on fire freshmen. Ellen Walshe of Tennessee and Canada, Avery Wiseman of Alabama, and do you know where she's from?
I think you have that swapped. Walsh is the Irish Olympian, and then Wiseman is from Canada, I think.
Yes. Okay. Ellen Walshe, Ireland, Avery Wiseman, Alabama / Canada, Andrei Minakov, Stanford, Min/Russia, and then Leon from ASU in France, as we mentioned. A lot of fast foreign freshmen. Who is the most impressive to you all?
I'm going to go Ellen Walsh. I mean, the weekend she had just across a breadth of events. She was the second fastest 100 flyer for a freshman ever at 50.2 or 3, I think. She had a 154 200 IM, I think a 406 4 IM, but she didn't swim the final, if I read correctly. But I mean, obviously super limited short course yards experience there, but this is a recruit that, I mean, at least, as far as I know, it's kind of under the radar. I mean, she was an Olympian, but she was kind of on the bubble for that Irish team, but just coming out and really tearing it up in some of her first swims ever, at this distance in her events. Pretty incredible. But then to see the 57.7 from Avery Wiseman as well, another recruit that I feel like was sort of under the radar, though. Andrew Maring, I believe, would beg to differ. Hopefully I said his name right. But I think he said he called her out in his season preview. But just, from those two freshman women, just some pretty incredible first short course outings.
Yeah, I think the women were definitely more impressive because, Andrei Minakov is a world silver medalist. Leon Marchand has been 409 in the long course 400 IM. So like those were expectations. The women, they're good swimmers in long course, but I don't think they had this sort of hype behind them coming in. It's interesting to me that all four freshmen we're talking about are foreign swimmers. And I'd love to have a deeper discussion with somebody about why that is. It's not that American freshmen aren't doing well, but the ones we are talking about are foreign swimmers. So is there something different in the way they're preparing their juniors? How does it play off in the long term? That could be maybe an interesting conversation for a different podcast.
To me, that's just because we haven't seen their yards times, right? Like Reagan Smith, Tori Husk, we know their progression in short course yards. And like you said, with Andrei and Leon, like we have expectations for them, but we also have expectations for them in yards because like Reagan Smith is the American record holder and Tori Husk is really, really fast in yards. But it's like Andrei, Leon, Avery, Ellen, we've never seen their yards times before. So like to see their first outings, it's just kind of like, whoa, this is exciting. Like this is really good. Any other NCAA thoughts before we move on to ISL?
I think it's worth pointing out, this was kind of women's weekend and we've still got the big men's teams, the big heavy hitters on the men's side to come. We didn't see Cal or Texas this weekend. So focus on the women for now. And then we've got the big men's stories coming up.
Yeah. Not to mention Michigan with, Maggie McNeil, obviously, among others. We've got Dean Ferris in Minnesota. We've got Max McHugh.
That Minnesota invite is going to be fun.
And I'm going to be there getting race videos and interviews. It's going to be awesome. All right. So, but moving on to ISL, my top headline, Caeleb Dressel is immortal. Sorry. Caeleb Dressel is a mortal.
Nailed it.
Key distinction.
He looked very average this weekend. He got third in the 50. Did he win the 100 IM? Maybe he got second. He split 50.3 something in the 100 fly on the mixed medley relay, and I was shook.
Considering that Callie is a lock for the final, is it worse for the league that Dressel returned early and wasn't quite his usual self versus holding out for the final?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Is it worse for the league? Probably. To me, this, as a fan, this feels like just one more kind of knife to the back of like, God, I wanted this to be cool, and it's just slow. And yeah, maybe.
I think no, I don't think it's worse for the league, because I'm still going to tune in because Caeleb Dressel's swimming.
But will you tune in next week to watch him swim slow again?
If Caeleb Dressel's swimming, I'll tune in, right? I mean, that, like, from my fan perspective, especially if he races Kyle Chalmers, but then we see Kyle beat him in the 50, and you're like, whoa, that doesn't normally happen. Like, is that going to happen again? Is Caeleb going to allow that again? I mean, I don't think it builds hype in the way it probably does for me, but I do think it creates some excitement of like, okay, so he can be beaten, because then I think it'll be even better if he gets back on form.
And he doesn't, it's not like he never loses. It's not like Phelps, who didn't lose for 10 years. You know, he loses. He just doesn't kind of lose to swimmers who aren't necessarily at their best either.
It does. Go ahead, Britton. Sorry.
No, you go. Whatever you were going to say was probably better than whatever I was going to say.
I was just going to say, from a narrative perspective, you know, it creates the tiniest little bit of adversity for Dressel to overcome in the lead up to this final. Like, it's pretty freaking hard to try to position Caeleb Dressel as an underdog ever. But now, if he comes back and you know, prevails in the final, that's a way better story.
Maybe he's doing it on purpose just to set up that marketing spin. I think this plays big in Australia, because the Australians love to see Caeleb Dressel swim slow.
They love to see their boy Kyle win, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like also, you know, maybe he announced his new coaching, and now he's super tired from his new coaches, and everyone's going to be like, oh, it doesn't work. And then he's going to taper, and everyone will be like, oh, never mind, it works.
If we get the behind the scenes documentary ever, this is a pivotal episode. Really, really sets up the finale. I can see it.
We have to remember, like, Caeleb has made obscene amounts of money in the last 6 to 12 months. And like, I'm not going to say that takes the edge off of somebody, but that can put some perspective on the need to train hard 12 months a year for 15 years in a row, or, you know, whatever it would be. And we've seen Caeleb take breaks before, right? Like, every time he does something big, and he did something big in Tokyo, we all agree on that, he takes a break. He did it in high school. He did it in college. Now he's doing it as a pro. So it kind of fits in his rhythm. Every time he does it, he's a little older, and it's a little bit of a different experience getting back into it. He's still not old, even by swimming terms. So, you know, he doesn't have anything that matters, nothing that's going to make him, you know, Caeleb Dressel type money until April. So I think good for him. I really hope they don't try to spin this into an underdog adversity narrative. You can see it a little in the People magazine, and in trying to spin kind of a mental health narrative, because there's a lot of money in mental health now. We know mental health is important, but there's also a lot of money in it, which is fine. But I hope that doesn't become his new pitch. I'd rather he leave that to the Tom Shields of the world.
I do also feel like that because of the shortened season this year, with April being trials, May world champs, it's like he's probably not as dialed in for ISL. And like Tori mentioned, Callie doesn't really need him to be at 100% for them.
Do you think he dodged the Kyle Chalmers 100 free? Like, do you think if he had been swimming well, he would have swum that 100 free?
I do. Yes. I totally think he dodged that one. I mean, if like the dude goes 47, he split 50 point from a swing, which his swing doesn't really help him more than the start. But like, yeah, I mean, you could tell he had a lighter schedule. You could tell Callie was not sweating it And yeah, I think he was like, I think for him, he puts a lot of stock in his racing. So if he's going to like race Kyle in the 100 free, he wants to be at his best, and he knew he wasn't. So he's like, I don't want to do that today. So the next ISL topic is that Toronto actually has a chance right now after London became the 4th team to win a playoff match out of 4 playoff matches so far. What are we thinking for ISL final? Do we think Toronto's going to get in? They're only 1 point in the standings currently behind LA, and they do have a more favorable match coming up than LA. LA is racing London and Energy and DC. And then Toronto has Cali, Aqua, and Iron. So I feel like Toronto has a much easier road to second than LA does. And so what happens if Toronto gets second, LA gets third, and then they're tied?
So the tiebreaker is based on points scored in matches that they both raced in. And what's the little wrinkle there is that even though they're deciding the playoff tie, that those tiebreaker matches include the regular season matches. I'm sure somebody had a good reason for putting that in, but just once again, the ISL making the rules way more complicated.
Always a wrinkle.
To be. But Barry Revson, who I'm sure we'll have back on at some point to work through this, ran the 576 permutations of results for the last 2 matches. And so I'm going to read you what he said. If Toronto wins match 6, Toronto makes the final unless Energy and LA finish 1-2 in some order and London finishes 3rd. Okay. You following so far?
Yep.
So Toronto winning match 6 is obviously good for them. If Toronto finishes 2nd in match 6, ignoring weird cases like DC or Iron winning matches, which are probably not going to happen, then they need either an Energy win and an LA 4th place finish, a London win and an LA 4th place finish, an LA win and an Energy 4th place finish, or a London win and an Energy 4th place finish. So in other words, they need one of those 3 teams ahead of them to finish 4th in their last match. Also not very likely. If Toronto finishes 3rd or 4th, they're out. So Toronto's clearest route is winning match 6 and then having Energy and LA both beat London and relegating London to 3rd, which is crazy because London just won that match, right? Like That seems like, London should be in great shape after winning, but they didn't do great in the first match. And so 2/3 and a 1st isn't better than 3 seconds, for example.
London and LA being paired for this playoffs continues to be an incredibly tough draw for LA. I mean, by far the hardest pairing here, kind of set them behind from the start.
So do we think like who's going to go all out? It's almost, what do they call it? A prisoner. What's the prisoner's dilemma? It's like who goes all out and gambles on whether or not the other ones are or are not going to go all out.
I mean, LA has their back against the wall, right? They have to go all out to win at this point, right? They need a huge result if they're going to make it happen.
They basically need to finish 1st or 2nd. They need to beat London.
Yeah. And I guess Toronto really doesn't have to go all out. They just have to get top 2, right?
Can they get top? Well, they really need to win.
I don't think there's any way Toronto beats the Cali. I mean, even if Dressel doesn't swim, I don't think they can beat Cali.
Which makes it very difficult. The 2nd place outcome for Toronto is a very difficult advancement.
In short terms, what has to happen there if Toronto gets 2nd?
LA, London, or Energy have to finish 4th in their meet.
Oh.
So I think, to me, Energy isn't going to go all out because they have a chance. Part of this is like, if you're LA and London, maybe if you're London, you're thinking you have a shot at the title after winning yesterday. LA, I think, is probably realistic where making the final is their ceiling this season. So I bet LA takes a little rest this week and makes sure they get to the final. That would be my guess.
Seems fair. I feel like at least some of the athletes on every team are probably like, yes, we can win, like the whole thing, right? Like the final. But I would think at least the coaches have that realism of, okay, yeah. I think LA has to be at their best to make
And
sure.
it's only 1 week later. So like hold on to
Yeah.
your taper for a week or that's reasonable. I mean, the Olympic trials end a week after they start. So if you can't hold on to that taper for 8 days,
Yeah.
whatever.
All right. That's ISL. Now it's time to play our favorite game, sink or swim. First up today on Sink or Swim, Lydia Jacoby signs with Arena. Do we think this will lead to a myriad of high school swimmers, specifically female swimmers, making suit deals in the future?
Absolutely, because I think there's two business factors in play here. The first is financial. I think you're going to get them at a better rate when they're in high school, and it's worth the gamble that they will then stay with you and maybe be a little friendlier in negotiations when they get into college and when they turn pro. Because even an Olympic gold medalist as a high school swimmer, I don't think is getting, Katie Ledecky, Simone Manuel, $1 million a year suit deals. I would guess that's not happening. And then the second is a marketing thing. I think when you have a high school swimmer and especially into college, that's when they're most visible. That's when they're swimming the most meets that the most people care about. They have sort of the college thing to latch onto. Think about how many pros sort of just disappear into a pro group. Think about like a Jack Conger and like there's all these swimmers who we don't know if they're still swimming or not. We find out when they show up at a meet. Versus the high school and college swimmers, they're swimming, they're active on social media, they're racing every 2 or 3 weeks. So I think there's a big like marketing value to high school and college swimmers that to a lot of extents, until you get to at least the world championships, if not the Olympics, that is more valuable than the pros. And I know the ISL wants to change that. They want to give those pros a platform to be a bigger marketing deal year round, but they're just terrible at it. And so right now, the NCAA system is the best marketing machine in swimming. So I'm swimming that there will be a lot more deals like this.
I'll swim it as well. I'll say that, Lydia Jacoby got the full treatment. She got the professional picture. She's got the stunning background. I mean, she was a blessing for swim marketing. She's got a unique story. She's the character outside of the pool, and she's an Olympic gold medalist. So, obviously those are few and far between, but, in women's swimming specifically when stars are peaking early in high school, I think it's going to be great for the sport. They might have some of, a little bit smaller deal, you see you grab your Arena suit, you take a picture and you post it on Instagram at your pool. It's not the full marketing rollout of them as a signed athlete, but I think on a lesser level, we'll absolutely see a fallout of some smaller tier deals.
If I'm a suit rep or a marketing rep at one of these suit companies, I think, man, the high school kids, they aren't going to have the same high powered agents. They aren't going to have the same opinions. They're going to do a lot more they're just going to say yes to what I asked them to do. It just seems easier. And again, I think this all wraps up into you're going to get a much better value. They're probably better at social media. I mean, some of the pros are still just a little old or are losing interest, it seems like, in social media. And you can tell when they're just posting when their agent tells them to post. Or I would imagine, I hate to peek behind the curtain too much, but I would imagine a lot of them are not posting their own content at all.
That makes total sense to me. Also, I would think that as younger swimmers, you're getting into the business side of things at a younger age. So you just get more experience at it. And, you're not, maybe this doesn't happen, but you're not overvaluing yourself. And so you get kind of a taste of it first. You can ease your way in. And then if you keep having a good career, it's like, look at Cody Miller. It's like his swimming has almost nothing to do, or how fast he swims has almost nothing to do with his value now, because he's had his swimming career go well. And then he just works at it on the business side and the media side of it. And boom.
I mean, who would you rather have, all else equal? We know Caeleb Dressel is the marketing monster that he is. But all else equal, would you rather have Caeleb Dressel, who comes out and says, I limit myself to 15 minutes on social media per day, or whatever he said in that interview?
Yeah.
Or would you rather have Lydia Jacoby, who is fully immersed in social media? She and her friends communicate via memes, is watching TikToks all day long. Like if you're looking at it from a pure like blast the market perspective, I think it's clear which of those is better.
Mel has called Caeleb out, like to Caeleb. He's been like, dude, you need to up your Instagram game, where it's like Lydia, she's there, like you said.
Right.
Yeah, I think along similar lines, another one I'm waiting, to see the fallout of is Erica Sullivan, who's insanely popular on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. The fact that she hasn't already announced any big deals is kind of surprising. And I assume there's something in the works. I think she did announce an agent or some sort of rep, but seems like another obvious one.
If anybody's going to be the next Cody Miller, I think it's Erica Sullivan.
Yeah, honestly. Absolutely.
Who Cody Miller taught to swim. Ironically enough.
Love it.
All right. Next up, is Kliment Kolesnikov the best bubble ring blower ever? We posted videos of him blowing bubble rings. It's pretty insane. Dude's got skills. Do you rank him at number one?
I'm going to sink this. I don't have a name who's better, but I just believe that there's got to be like some 14-year-old kid in Southern California who learned how to do it on YouTube that is absolutely doing it better. His were pretty legit though. If we're going like elite swimmers, he's the best I've ever seen. But I guarantee you that there's some kid you've never heard of in California that can do it better.
His technique is unlike anything I've ever seen before in the bubble blowing realm. But yeah, I mean, go on YouTube. There's tons of people who aren't, professional swimmers who have, insane bubble ring abilities. So take this one as well. I will note though, of course, it's going to be on the Cody Miller vlog. He noted in his original post.
I will note that you too can be an insane bubble blower with SwimSwam's bubble blowing Instagram filter, by the way.
Check it out on Instagram. Also, I do love this team up of like Kolesnikov's going to be on the Cody Miller vlog. Like that's one thing that ISL's done well. Yeah. Athletes get to meet other athletes, foreign and domestic. I think that's so great that Clemmy is going to make it a cameo on the Cody Miller vlog. Claire Curzan broke 3 national high school records. You probably have never heard of any of them because they're in short course meters. Do we need to start having high school state meets in short course meters so that the national high school records in short course meters become legit?
I feel a little bit like an old man, don't change my sport, but I like yard swimming. I like these short course meters, especially now that more swimmers are swimming fast more often as sort of like a mid-season topper upper. But I like short course yards. I like that high school swimming has kind of a unique course that they can talk about and focus on. It doesn't really, I know a lot of people would like all American swimming to go to short course meters, but the financial burden of doing that is just unbelievable. And you would have too much of an advantage over the teams that had short course meters pools. We already don't have enough pools in this country. We can't just knock down 98% of them. So I am sinking that high schools should have state meets and short course meters. That being said, if somebody did it once, we would cover it like crazy and it would get tons of clicks. So definitely go for it.
I think it's clear that, the opportunities in pro swimming in the US are trending, or in the world are trending short course meters. So to have an occasional high school meet just to familiarize yourself with the format makes a lot of sense. And, I think it's absolutely something that, I would swim happening, but agreed, as long as the American collegiate system stays short course yards, we're not going to see or should see state meets going short course meters.
That's a good point. I think state meets should be in yards. I think there should be a national high school championship in short course meters. We'd all love to see it. It would be awesome. That's my 2 cents. All right, next on our list, we alluded to it earlier. Caeleb Dressel announced that he will now be training under Anthony Nesty and Steve Jungbluth, the coaches he trained with in college. Do we think that his event schedule will change in major international meets while training under Steve and Anthony?
God, that's a really tough one. I don't know that I'd declare they'd change because he's training under Steve and Anthony. I think, how do I put this? It could be an indicator that he's willing to change his events because those guys could be better. I think we're going to see him on an 800 free relay at Worlds for sure. So I think if we call that an event change, I think that we'll see him on an 800 free relay at Worlds. I'm willing to go on the record with that. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him go after a 200 IM or something at a lesser meet, but unless that goes really well, I think we'll in Paris see him right back in the 50 free, 100 fly, and a whole lot of relays.
I mean, I feel like that's an event change. Have we ever seen Caeleb Dressel in an 800 free relay in any course? Because I can't think of a time. That
I can't think of one.
Sorry, Tori, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I would probably think it as well. I mean, I think my remaining question is just we don't know exactly what's behind this change. Is it that Greg Troy is retiring? Is it that Caeleb was really just ready for a change? Like, we don't really know why this is happening. We might be just like reading into it too much. It could be as simple as Troy's ready to be done. That remains to be seen, but it's kind of like, why would he make a change at this point unless, I don't know, he's just like, I don't know, so on another level mentally that he's just bored with dominating his usual events. I just don't see, what the point would be. But I think if anyone were to just get bored with dominating their usual events, it would probably be Caeleb, and maybe he's just ready for a new challenge, but seems unlikely.
I don't think he'd give up the 50 or the 100 free unless he had the world record. I think he's so close to those world records in his head, that extra 10th or whatever he needs, he can probably, we've seen his race breakdowns on his YouTube channel, and he can probably think of 15 ways he can find that extra 10th. Whether he ever will or not, we don't know. But I think he would never give up the 50, 100 free without having the world records.
Agreed. But I feel like he could. Yeah, I mean, the 800 free relay, I think, is the only realistic thing we'll see him in this summer.
Do you think he'd go after the 200 free at the World Championships individually?
No, I don't.
I could see it.
I don't.
I'd put it less than 50-50, but I could see it.
I mean, he'd have to, if he gave up the 100 fly, then yes, I could see it. Because then the events are clean. There's no overlap. It's clean. You go 200 free and then 100 free and then 50 without any, without any schedule conflicts besides relays. So you're not like doing doubles or triples or anything crazy like that.
But even at Worlds, even at a Worlds where he gets another one a year later, doesn't have to stew on it for too long.
I think if he gave up the 100 fly, he would do 200, 150, which would be freaking awesome. But I don't think he'd do 4 events. I think that's too many. And I think for him, it's too, above all, I think it would be too mentally taxing. I don't think he could.
What if he gives up the mixed medley relay?
I mean, that'd be awesome, but I don't because he's like a team player, right? He's too much of a team player. He's not going to be like, no, guys, can't do the relay.
Okay, but him on the mixed medley relay doesn't actually make the mixed medley relay in spite of what the U.S. Olympic coaching staff believes.
Well, it does, just not the way they did it.
Okay. We can have a whole podcast arguing about mixed medley relays sometime.
Yeah, that's true.
I sink Caeleb Dressel on the American mixed medley.
All right. Speaking of mixed medley stars, Adam Peaty, we have to talk about him. He hasn't swam in the ISL yet. Will he show up in Eindhoven and compete at all in the next 2 weeks?
I don't care. I've decided I just don't care. I'm so sick of like the tease of it all. And I wrote a big long comment about this the other day, and I think this is so ISL. They love to play these games where they think they can intrigue people by not giving them information. And Tori knows this as well as anybody because she's worked in just about every sport under the sun. But like 90% of sports, you tell the story before the competition happens. And then the ending of the story is when you show up at the game or at the meet or at the match, and you find out the punchline, the end. You can't not tell the first 90% and expect people to show up and care. Like, you can't just tease people over and over and over again. They will lose interest. And I have lost interest in the Adam Peaty saga. I am sinking him showing up. It just, nothing he's saying, he's not saying he's excited about ISL. He's not saying go London Roar. He sent Kyle a book so that he could get a shout out for his book on Kyle's Instagram. But like, I don't see any indications that he is interested. I don't know. Maybe he'd show up for the final just to get on the big stage and plug his book some more.
I will say, against my best judgment, I am intrigued. I do want to see whether he shows up. I'm not out on it. I don't think he will. I think on principle, I'm thinking it because it would be tremendously, if I'm LA Current, I'm just like, come on, please don't show up. We already have a tough enough draw. You haven't been here all season. Just let us battle this out without you. So on principle, thinking it, don't think he should. But it would be kind of fun if he did.
Why aren't we talking about Pernille Bloom anymore? We need to continue talking about Pernille Bloom being a great dancer and that she's going to win.
That I feel like it's assumed at this point that she'll just win.
Yeah,
right?
I think we need to end every show with Pernille Bloom, not Adam Peaty, because I'm bored with Adam.
Well, but like Pernilla, like there's no more. I can't say anything else. She's gonna win. She's an amazing dancer.
Yeah, I guess it's more fun to talk about a crappy dancer than a good dancer.
Yeah, I don't think Adam Peaty is showing up to ISL. I think he's taking his break from swimming. I think he's done for a while, or at least until this summer.
The spring, Coleman. The spring.
I'm sorry. Until May. Yeah, May is spring. All right. Any closing thoughts for this week's breakdown, y'all?
Coleman, how long before you're back in Texas? Speaking of y'all.
Good question. I will see the Texas teams in a week at Minnesota. I don't know.
Do you live in Brooklyn now?
I mean, at this moment, I live in Brooklyn. Yeah.
That seems like the most Coleman thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Living in Brooklyn. We've got lots of practice and pancakes coming up on the horizon, including a very spicy practice with the Harvardman and Dean Ferris.
Never heard of him.
When's that dropping?
I think we'll get a taste of it before we see the Harvard teams compete in Minnesota.
Ooh,
yeah.
Good.
So we'll have some fun media coming out within the next 9 days. How's that?
9 days.
9 days.
Book it.
All right. Well, until then, this is SwimSwam Breakdown. Tune in next week for your week's news in swimming.